My book, The Psychopath Epidemic. Is that reversed? Does that help? Probably not. Anyway, comes out today. Finally, after many, many years, this book is finally out. I want to thank Tony Kynaston. It was Tony who first suggested I write another book about 7-8 years ago. And then sponsored it, supported it, did weekly phone calls with me for years while I struggled to figure out what the story was I wanted to tell. This book went through a number of complete revisions and drafts as I tried to work out what the story was. But I am proud of it, and I think it's an important book and an important story, and I want to encourage you all to, of course, buy it, read it, and think about it, because it's important. My premise is that the number one problem facing the world today isn't bushfires, it isn't Trump, it isn't climate change, it isn't the wealth disparity. The number one problem facing us today is that psychopaths are in control of too many of our organizations and institutions: political, business, religious, media, law enforcement, military, education. And the reason is, the conclusion I came to over the last 8 or so years writing this book, is that psychopaths they have a number of things going for them that make it easy for them to climb the ladder of success, and they actually get encouraged by organizations to rise through the power structure, because they're willing to do things that most people aren't willing to do. Psychopaths are willing to lie, cheat, and steal, make decisions that hurt other people, thousands of people, millions of people, because their empathy center is broken. It's one of the defining characteristics of a psychopath or a sociopath, or somebody with antisocial personality disorder is the clinical term for it in the DSM-5. Their empathy center is broken. They don't feel guilt. They don't have a normal response like most of us do. If we do something that hurts somebody, and we all do, but if you do something that causes somebody else harm, physical, psychological, emotional, most of us feel bad about that. We lose sleep. We feel sick on the inside. We regret it. Psychopaths don't. They sleep fine. And in fact, they think of themselves as winners, because they're prepared to do things that other people aren't prepared to do in order to get wealth and power. As a consequence of that, they tend to rise through the ranks of all of our organizations. Again, it's not just business, but religious, political, military, law enforcement, etc. And so we've ended up, and I think it's particularly been driven in post-World War II, American-style capitalism has actually made this problem worse than it's ever been before. You know, psychiatrists, experts who study this suggest that about 1% of the population are psychopaths, rank highly on the psychopath scale. Other psychiatrists say it might be as high as 4-5%. It's unsure, but it's a lot. Now, if it is 1%, in America, that's about 2 million adults that are psychopaths. In Australia, it's about 184,000 psychopaths. Worldwide, we're talking 60 million psychopaths. Now, where are those people? Well, some might be in jail, some are sitting at home jerking off, but some of them, the ones with a particularly astute intelligence or particularly clever, in other ways street smart, end up in organizations, and they rise through those organizations, and they end up in positions of senior management. Maybe not necessarily the CEO, but senior management. And you end up with a lot of senior management that are prepared to make horrible, deplorable decisions for their own wealth and power and the success of their organization, which they associate with their own wealth and power because they get paid well to do these things. This is the big problem. If we got rid of the psychopaths, or at least tempered their ability to execute their worst impulses, I think we could solve a lot of the world's problems. We could do something about climate change. We could do something about wealth inequality. We could do something about tensions in the Middle East. We could do something about I don't know, Trump or ScoMo or Boris, or these people getting elected, if we could get rid of the psychopaths or limit their ability to do harm. So that's what the book is about. It's out today in Australia, out in the US on the 7th, and in England on the 7th, the UK, the rest of the world. Google it, Psychopath Epidemic. You'll find it in all good bookstores. Read it, buy a copy to give to your friends or your enemies or your boss, your mother-in-law, your colleagues. Order 1,000 copies for your workplace. Give them to people. It's important that we wrest control of the economy of the world away from psychopaths. It's the number one problem we need to take seriously. And people don't understand it. Here's the thing. Most people, thanks to Hollywood, still think psychopaths are all serial killers. They're Dexter. They're killing Eve. And that's a tiny percentage of psychopaths. The serial killers, according to psychiatrists, experts, most psychopaths aren't serial killers or dictators or warlords, right? Most of them have wear a suit or a cassock and a funny hat. Most of them work in an office. They're white collar psychopaths. Garden variety psychopaths is the term that I use in the book. Your garden variety psychopath are the ones that we need to worry about. No, Mark, I don't think it's chemical castration, because it's not them having sex that's the problem. I don't know that removing their genitalia is going to stop them from being psychopaths, because it's a brain thing. For whatever reason, the empathy center of their brain is malformed. They don't feel empathy like most of us do, and that enables them to do things that most of us would not do. And that's how the book came to be. Like this version of the book is, I was writing all these stories about corporations and religions and politicians that just do terrible things, and I'm like, why do these people get in positions of wealth and power and then just make bad decisions and do horrible things? Why does it keep happening? And then I happened to read a book on psychopaths, a couple of books on psychopaths around about the time, completely unrelated really, and the light went off. I'm like, of course they're all psychopaths. Once you twig that psychopaths are in positions of power, wealth, power, and organizations, everything makes a lot more sense. But then, okay, so understanding that is step one. Step two is, well, what do we do about it? And that's what the last chapter of the book is about. So I don't think it's chemical, and I think psychopaths can be good. Thanks, Grant Ovenden, your copies of the book. Grant ordered like 100 copies or something. I appreciate that, Grant. They're being shipped to you. Might have been 10, I don't know, 20, I can't remember, 25. He ordered a bunch. They're coming to you, pre-ordered, part of the campaign. Thanks for the support, Grant. Just getting them shipped to you, hopefully in the next few days. In New Zealand. But where was I going with this? Oh yes, what do we do about it? That's the big issue. And how do we? That's where I was going. Psychopaths can be good, I think. Yeah, they probably have skills. They're probably useful from an evolutionary and a progress perspective. Like maybe Steve Jobs. A lot of people seem to think Steve Jobs was a psychopath. Yeah, Gustavo, was Caesar one? Like, yeah, I get these questions all the time, and obviously as I write about history and record about historical characters, I think about that. Hard to say. We know so little about Caesar or Alexander or Augustus or any of these guys, Caligula even. The historical sources for them are so scant that it's really difficult to know. I mean, I could say that with Caesar there are definitely signs that he had empathy for people in his life, but how do we know that that's real? We don't. So it's hard to say, but it would make sense if some of these people were psychopaths, some of these major historical characters. Thank you, Amanda. Whoop, whoop. Yes, the book is finally out. Yes, Grant, Jason N. Yes, he certainly had a lot to do with my thinking around this book. Definitely think he is a psychopath based on... And it was, in fact, our experience with Jason that partly inspired me wanting to learn more about psychopaths so I could avoid them in future. And also a former boss of mine at Microsoft, I think, was a psychopath. So yeah, look, I think we've all, as I've talked to people over the last 5 or 6 years, everyone has a story of people they've worked with that they think were probably psychopaths. Yeah, Taylor, my son Taylor, one of Australia's most successful e-commerce entrepreneurs, according to what I've heard on Instagram, asks if there is any role in society that's positive. Yeah, as I was saying, I think, the big biography that came out on Steve Jobs after he died suggested he might have been a psychopath. Now, you can argue whether or not Steve's contribution was positive or negative. I don't know. But I do think psychopaths can have a positive role. They tend to drive things forwards more than most of us will. But they also have a tendency to do a lot of damage, a lot of negative consequences. And I think we need to be careful of that. We need to try and leverage the positives and limit the negatives with psychopaths. And it's not going to start until we're more aware of what psychopaths are and where they lurk and how to tell. One of the things I would like to see is every organisation do mandatory psychopath tests for management. And, just, okay, well, now we know who the psychopaths are, and we can put measures into place to limit their ability to do damage. One of the things I recommend in the book is every organisation, whether it's a business organisation or religious or political, should have an advisory board, an internal advisory board made up of people who have SATs, psychopathy checklists, and passed, as in they're not psychopaths, who have to validate every decision made by the management that failed the psychopath checklist. They have the ability to prevent psychopaths from moving ahead with their worst impulses. So you can still have your psychopaths in senior management. We just need to have mechanisms in place to stop them from doing bad things. You might say, well, we already have a board of directors, but if more than half of the board of directors are psychopaths, then psychopaths think the decisions of other psychopaths are fantastic. They think they're great. So anyway, check it out. It's available today. Oh, hi, Chrissy. I want to thank Chrissy for all of her support over the many, many long, arduous years of me writing this book. Tony's support, Chrissy's support were absolutely, vital for this book getting finished. And as well as Hunter and Taylor just making fun of me all those years, going, how's your book going? Yeah, how's your book going? You finished your book yet? Well, yes, bitches, I finished my book. See? Ha! Now you can shut up and bitch about my other projects that I haven't finished. The film, yeah, finished, will be out in March. It's done. Just got to release it now in March. Anyway, not talking about the film today. Thank you, babe. Book, did it, done, out. Google it. Help me out. Tweet about it. Facebook about it. It's important. Not awkward for me. Paula wants to know if it will be available at some time in audio form. Maybe. I'm asking my publisher what the status of that is. They haven't got back to me yet on the audio book, but eventually, hopefully, an audio book. I will be starting a podcast soon where I will be bringing psychiatrists and hopefully psychopaths on the podcast to talk about psychopaths. And maybe going around the world and interviewing psychopaths in positions of power and asking them about what it's like to be a psychopath in positions of power. So if you know any psychopaths who are in positions of power, let me know and I'll go and interview them. Anyway, Psychopath Epidemic, out today, all good bookstores worldwide. It's on Amazon, it's on Apple, it's on Google Books, it's in Barnes & Noble. If you go into your local bookstore and it's not featured strongly in the window display, complain. Hey, why don't you have The Psychopath Epidemic by Cameron Riley, the world's greatest expert on psychopaths? Yeah, no, seriously, like anything you can do to plug it on Facebook, plug it on Twitter, plug it on your social medias, ask your bookstores if you still have a bookstore, if they haven't all been put out of business yet by Amazon, to get it in. I'm available for Q&As. I'm available for odd jobs, making coffee, sweeping up around the stores afterwards, anything like that. To help out if it'll get the word out. And it's not about me getting rich and famous as an author. It's about seriously, I swear to Caesar the content of the book, I think, is important, and we need to understand it. It's important for society. It's important for your kids and your grandkids that we stop the psychopaths from fucking shit up, because they are fucking shit up. The world doesn't need to be a huge fucking mess. We have plenty of ability. We have plenty of capability to make the world a better place. We have the technology to make Steve Austin better, stronger, faster. Sorry, pop culture things just come into my head all the time. We could do it. We could do something about climate change. We could do something about wealth inequality. We could do something about the size of the number of active nukes in the world, and the tensions in the Middle East right now, and our political system. We could do it. It's not that difficult. The only thing that's getting in the way are the psychopaths that run our political parties and our media and our organizations, our business organizations, and law enforcement and the military. We need to get rid of them. Gustavo, Portuguese version. Okay, well, I think there's a Russian version coming out. Sorry, we'll get a... Hi, Edna. Yes. No, it's deliberately backwards, Edna. If you can read this, then you're a psychopath. That's the secret of this. So, Psychopath Epidemic. Get it today. All good bookstores. Tell your friends. And let's do something about stopping the psychopaths.